Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar at Notes Code. Our topic today is creating workflows has never been so easy, presented by We4IT, and the presenters will be Simon Peak, and Simon and Marco will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. So thank you Simon and Marco for preparing this, and thank you to everyone who's attending. Just a quick reminder to let you know that we will be recording this so that if someone in your organization wants to watch this webinar or was not able to attend, they'll be able to watch it in the future via the recording. In your GoToWebinar control panel, there is a section where you can see questions, where you can type in questions. If you have a question as we go along in this presentation, you can go ahead and type in the questions, and then they'll be queued up for the question and answer section at the end of the webinar. And as a reminder, if you are attending this webinar, you're entered into winning a trip to the Atlanta MWLUG conference, or your choice. You could also opt for the new Mac Pack, which is an Apple Watch, a Mac Airbook, and an Apple TV. Okay, so Simon, I'm going to turn the time over to you now so that you can begin the presentation.
Fantastic. Okay, so thank you very much. Let me just share my screen.
Great, we see your screen.
Fantastic. Okay, so thank you. Thanks for that introduction, Scott. So my name is Simon Peak, and the session is about workflows and how creating them can become, well, maybe not a pleasure, but at least much easier. I'll be demonstrating this using our solution, which allows users to create their own workflows in a visual way. As Scott said, at the end of the session, I'll be joined by my colleague Marco Spinning, the author of Avido, for the Q&A session. Now, Marco really enjoys a challenge, so please don't hold back with your questions. So you can ask the questions in chat, and Marco may well answer you there directly, but I think, as Scott said, we'll repeat the question and the answer at the end of the session for everyone to hear. You'll be pleased to hear that there aren't very many slides, and these are really just setting the scene for the demo at the end. So here we go. So all organizations have workflows, of course, whether they're on paper or on a computer system. They're defined by the people in the business. So the HR manager, for example, knows that holiday requests come from a member of staff. They know that the holiday system first needs to be checked to see if they have enough days left. They know that the request then needs to be checked and approved by, and so on. Now, if a business process is going to be automated, the developer needs to interview the owner of the process to gain a complete understanding of the flow of information, the approval stages, information to be checked and updated, and so on. Now, this stage may or may not be easy and straightforward, depending partly on the user and partly on how the developer or business analyst deals with them. Here are some fairly key questions. I guess you wouldn't be attending this session if you're entirely happy with your current system, and often even the first step can be difficult. Getting the business user to clearly and accurately specify the workflow they want to create can sometimes be a real challenge. People, users, aren't always good at thinking analytically. It's very easy for them to forget to describe a step in the process. Telling the process owner to create a flowchart can often help them focus their mind on the flow of information. In fact, my personal preference is to start with a flowchart and add a more detailed description later on. You could use something simple like Visio, or a free tool that I've used in the past called Workflow Designer, or you could just even use a piece of paper, whatever works for you. Now, If you have a centralized workflow system, this can often help in the creation of those workflows. Perhaps you already have a workflow engine. Many large organizations do. A core set of script libraries and UI components that you can centrally maintain and reuse for each workflow that you create. One benefit of this is that when a new developer starts, having such a framework makes it so much easier for them to get up to speed quickly. And a further benefit is that users of a new workflow app are instantly familiar with the UI. Documentation. The topic of application documentation can be a little sensitive. I'm sure that everyone here documents their code thoroughly. Just remember that the next person who has to maintain your code might just be you, and karma will get you in the end. If you managed to get the business user to create a decent spec and to draw a flowchart, consider storing these in a central documentation database, or perhaps even in the help about document of the application itself. Poorly documented workflow makes maintenance a real challenge. Unpicking the logic of a complex workflow, one that has code running over multiple forms, multiple subforms, buttons, script libraries, across databases, isn't anyone's idea of a good time. And if it is, perhaps you should get out more. Of course, what many of us actually have is some workflow in individual applications, maybe some shared workflow components, but perhaps without a clear understanding of the relationships between the components and the applications. Meaning that if you change the shared code, you may be uncertain of all the consequences, and that's a bad thing. Okay, now I've only got one poll question in this session, so Scott.
Okay, we're going to run a small poll here. Get everyone's attention. So on your screen will come up a question. When you need to create a new workflow or modify an existing one, is your response either A, yay, it's time to party, or you would rather run and hide? So what's your first instinct, the response to this question? We'll get everyone to respond to this. And we'll see how we're doing here. We're almost half of us voted. We're trying to keep this poll just a little bit light and funny, just so that we can, it is serious business when we talk about coding and taking care of this kind of process. So we wanted to keep it fun. All right, I'm going to stop the poll in 3 seconds. So if you're delaying your vote, you can't quite decide whether you party or you run and hide. Got to decide quick. And I'm going to share the results now. So 30% of us say, yay, it's time to party. And 70% of us say, run and hide. So there we go.
I'm actually quite impressed that the party people represent as much as 30%. That's actually quite a decent sized percentage. I was expecting it to be lower. Okay, so we're going to look at how creating new workflows can be made easier, even for those 30% of people who find it an occasion to celebrate, made easier and less painful for everyone. In particular, we're going to see how people in the business can be empowered to design their own automated processes, and how the task of implementing them can be reduced to a process of configuration rather than cutting large amounts of code. Our visual modeler, and this is a screenshot taken from it, is designed to be used by the business user to define or describe the process they want automated. From this screenshot, I hope you can see how such a tool would help them think clearly and logically about what they're trying to achieve. Once they've defined it in that way, the workflow is then handed over to a technician to complete the work. And because the task of implementing the workflow is just a matter of configuration with perhaps a little formula code, this step doesn't even need a senior developer. It's normally carried out by a junior developer or an admin. So today we're going to look at a solution which can bring business together with the IT department to simplify the creation of process automation. Because users are defining their workflow in a visual way, the workflows created are actually inherently self-documenting. The act of creating a workflow in a Vido means that it's now documented. And because they are clearly and visually defining the work, because the workflow logic is being clearly and visually defined, it's much more likely to be right first time. Because Vido provides a fully featured workflow engine, there's no need to create specialized components for each application. This means that workflow is implemented consistently in each individual app with the benefits of user and developer familiarity. Users instantly understand workflows, and developers don't need to spend hours unpicking the logic. So we have here a single framework providing consistency to users and the flexibility to adapt to the workflow requirements of any app, no matter how complex it can be. And if you need to support more than one language, that's also part of the package. I should mention that Vido itself is a development framework that can be used to put a new front end on an existing database or to create new applications from the ground up. This is done very rapidly without using Domino Designer, and simple apps can be created in minutes or hours. Normal average apps in a day or two, complex apps maybe a couple of weeks. And when I say complex, I mean an app that would take months to complete if you were using Domino Designer. You can modernize existing Notes client apps to state-of-the-art browser-based apps without changing the underlying Notes database, and all without the need for any Xpages skills. And finally, apps created or modernized with Vido will automatically work on all devices, whether computers, phones, or tablets. And of course, the same thing applies to the workflows that are created inside Vido as well. Now, just before I do the workflow demo, I want to spend a few seconds showing you, just a few seconds, showing you what an Vido application might look like. And so here is such an application. This is a CRM system. It has a series of portlets showing things like views and documents and charts. And a simple CRM system like this could be created in less than a day. Okay, let's go back to how our workflow module actually works in practice. So I'm going to create from scratch a purchase approval workflow. And in the interests of transparency, I should mention that for this demo, I have done a little bit of groundwork, maybe 5 minutes worth, to save you watching me type in some boring setup and configuration details. In particular, I've created this, a purchase request form. Actually, in a Vido, we call it a document layout. And as you can see, it just contains a few fields for title, the name of the requester, the date the item is required by, and the description of the item. And here's how I created it. I did this inside Avido Designer. I created this purchase document layout, which contains these panels, 2 panels, and inside the panels we have these fields that we saw a second ago in the client side. And that was the groundwork that I did. Now let's go across to the workflow editor. Now the big blank window, big blank pane, is the workflow modeler, which is where you would get the user to define or design their workflow. Or perhaps maybe they don't do it by themselves. Maybe you sit with them and together you go through the process. Now, the first thing we need to do is to create some nodes. Nodes are the action points where something happens in a process. The outcome of one node affects how you progress through the workflow. For example, a node might test a condition or perhaps send an email. In this case, we need a starting point, a start node. This is a purchase approvals database, so we need a decision, and the outcome of the decision will either be that the purchase has been approved or declined. So that's the start node. Here we have the decision, decline, and approve. Fantastic. Now we need to join the nodes together with relations, and relations are the path through the workflow process. And these can get very complex. I'll be doing something relatively simple today. So now we've established the path through the workflow. The decision itself will be it's going to be a manual process. It can be automated with a formula, but in this case the decision is going to be manual, and we're either going to say no or yes. So that's it. That's defines the basic process. Just to finish this off, we'll configure it further by defining who can do what. Now, for the workflow to function correctly, we have to set the creator of the workflow to have editor rights. And in the interests of transparency, I'm going to allow everybody to see the content of this node. So editor is creator, yep. And who's allowed to make the decisions? Now, in this demo, I'm going to set the decision maker to be me. If this were a real purchase request database, you would set this to the purchasing manager or purchasing department. So it could be a person or it could be a group. So in this case, I'm just going to pull my name out of the NAB. Okay, so I'm going to be the editor, and I'm going to allow everybody to see the contents of this node. Once the decision has been made, we want everybody to be able to see this decision. So whether it's been approved or declined, everybody gets to see the decision, but nobody is going to be allowed to change it. So both the approve and decline nodes are set so that nobody can change them. It's not appropriate to change these documents because the way you make these decisions is not by editing the documents, but by going through the workflow process. And that should be it. If I now save my work and then activate the workflow, and the workflow can't be used until such time as it has been activated. This should now, excuse me, this should now work. The final thing I have to do now that the workflow has been created is to incorporate this into our application. So here's the purchasing document layout that I created earlier, and I'm going to go to the properties of this layout and choose the workflow that I've just created, apply my changes, we'll close this layout, and if I now go back to the Avido user experience, the client, and create a new purchase request, we should see that there is a new workflow section, a new workflow action. So, what's the title of this request? I need a new toy. I want it straight away, and it's a very shiny toy. Great, okay, I'd like one of those, so I request approval. And you can see here that the next editor for the decision node has been hard-coded. I can't change this here. I could have configured it to give me a drop-down list of people, but in this case, because I'm the only person involved, I'm using me. So please, I really want this. Okay. Next, so I am now submitting my purchase for approval. And if I just refresh my view, I can see that there is my new document. Okay, so I've submitted the request. Now, of course, I'm also approving the request. So I'm going to edit my document and look at my possible decisions. My decisions, if you recall, I typed in was yes and no. So I'm going to approve this and click on next. And this will show that this workflow is complete. And the next node is the approve node, which is actually an end node. So little note to the requester, go for it, next, and that's done. The process is now complete. Well, okay, so that this works basically, but it's not very flowy. Let's add some notifications to this process. So in the first thing we want to do is for the decision maker to be notified when a new purchase request is made. So if I go into this section for processor email, because it's the processor, the decision maker, who needs to be notified, yes, we want him to receive an email. And here is where you can define the content of this email. Now, we've actually made things a little bit easier because we've allowed you to, we've provided a standard template for these emails with that contain lots of placeholders. So the name of the database, the name of the workflow, the node that we're looking at, and the email will contain a doc link. You can create your own emails, you can create your own placeholders that reference, I don't know, other fields in your application. So the decision maker will be notified when a new purchase request is made. And another email that would be useful would be an information email to the creator, the person who made the purchase request in the first place. And we can use the template for that as well. So they'll be notified when a decision has been made. Likewise, on the approve step, we want an email to be sent, and we will use the same template. Fantastic. If I save my changes and activate this version of the workflow, it's worth noting that any workflows in progress will be completed with the version of the workflow they were created with. So only new documents will be processed with the new workflow. So I'm going to make a new request. I'm going to want another toy. I want it straight away. And this toy is really shiny. Okay, I'm going to go to the next step. Again, we get this workflow dialog where the next person has been automatically specified, and the next node, we're told, is going to be the decision node. And this time, if I go into my mail file, that reminds me, we can integrate mail and calendaring into the Avido front end, which we have done here. So if I open up iNotes, I will see that I've just received this new email relating to the decision node. And if I open this document, you can see the template. You can see how the template's been used. And if I click on the doc link, it will take me to the really shiny toy that has been requested. Now, I think we probably had this guy's had enough toys, so he's not going to get this one approved. I'll push this through into the next step. So the next node is going to be decline. And now if I refresh my mail, I should find a new email. So this email has been sent to me as the person who created the purchase request in the first place, telling me that the process step was declined, and I'm afraid I can't have a new shiny. Okay, I'll delete both of those emails. Now, to finish off, let's add one final step to my process, just to make it a bit more sophisticated. Let's add a new step in the middle here that will provide some automation. And what I'll do is I'll set my workflow to automatically approve any purchase requests that are less than a certain value. So let's delete this step, add in a new node. So the purchase request will go to this automated stage, and then if the request is higher than a certain value, it will go to the manual decision maker. If, however, the value is less than a certain amount, the approval will be granted automatically. So this step is called auto approve. And now we need to evaluate whether or not this is a low value purchase. So we're going to automatically do this. So we're going to use a formula. I'm going to say that if the price is greater than or equal to 100 euros, then it will go to the next to the decision maker for approval or not. However, for lower value items, so if the price is less than 100 euros, it will automatically be approved. So we'll save that and activate this version of the workflow. Fantastic. So I just set the workflow to evaluate the price of the item, but in my document layout, I haven't got a price. I'm not specifying a price anywhere. So let's grab a new field and stick this into the top panel. Now, this field is going to be called price, because remember, that's the value, that's the field that I typed into the formula dialog in the workflow editor. I said price greater than, less than, whatever. So the field name has to be price. And this is obviously a number that we're evaluating. So let me save my changes there. I'll apply that and then close. And this time we should find that the behavior of the workflow differs depending on what I do next. So if I'm ordering a really cheap toy. I still want it straight away, but this is only going to cost 50 euros. It's not very shiny at all. I'll go to the next step, and this time something slightly different will happen. This time the workflow step that we see is, I did something wrong.
You're missing the automated option.
Yeah. Right. Okay. There was one option I forgot to set in the. Thank you, Marco. There was one option I forgot to set in the dialog, which was to for the auto approve step to run immediately and not wait for anything else. So I'll save that. Activate that. So let's try that again. So new purchase request. It's a really cheap toy. Price was 50. And go to the next step. So if I did that right, this time the next node is approved because the auto approve step has evaluated the condition, the value, the contents of the price field, has decided that based on that evaluation, the next node must be approved. So this time it's just done. And if I look in my inbox, I should find that I've just received a new notification just now saying that the process, the purchase was approved. Whereas if I create another new purchase for an expensive toy, let's say this is 150 euros, and go to the next step. In this case, we will get the original dialog back, which is that it's going to go for manual approval on the decision node. So an email will be generated, sent to the approver, who will then have to manually approve or decline the purchase. And that's it, really. The workflows that I've been creating there have been pretty straightforward. However, our clients have been known to create some pretty complex workflows using Avido. And I've already explained that Avido can be used to create brand new applications, like I've been doing in this example, or it can modernize and mobilize existing applications. We even have a basic wizard that helps you transform existing apps, although I'm reliably informed that our developers are currently working on a far more sophisticated version of the wizard. And with that, let's see if anyone has any questions based on what they've seen today.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions coming in, so I think you can see them as. Are you going to look up the questions there?
Or no, please ask them.
Okay, cool. All right, we had. Do you have something like an automatic history function?
Yes, we have one. So you just have to enable it, and then you can automatically see which user at which time has delegated the document to which node. So this will, everything will happen automatically. So you have nothing to do with that.
Okay.
So here is I've just brought up on the screen the history dialog, which is automatically available for all workflows, which describe the entire process through each workflow step.
Okay. Perfect. Next question. Does the workflow designer work only in the browser?
No, it doesn't. So it will also work in the Nodes client directly if you have a Nodes client version 9 or higher. So then you can execute everything also directly in the Nodes client, and it will also work offline. So when you have a replica, everything will work.
Okay. And next question, does the workflow support escalations? I'm assuming this is for like a help desk type of scenario.
So escalations, if I bring up the dialog in the workflow editor, there is an escalation process here which allows you to define things like who the document should be escalated to. So, for example, if the approver, in my example, if the decision maker for the purchase process had gone on holiday for a month, you could the node could be configured so that if no approval was made within a certain period of time, which you define here, then the request could automatically be escalated to the person or people who are defined here. So if I request holiday from my manager, but my manager is away for a month, then I don't want to have to wait a month before I get my holiday approved. So if no response is made within, let's say, 5 minutes, then maybe I'll have that. Maybe that should be escalated to his boss so that he can approve my holiday. The short answer is yes.
Okay. Perfect. Another question coming in. He sees that I see that you're using localhost to do the development and demo. Is there a reason for that other than convenience, or is this going to be the typical scenario if they're using it for their location?
No, it's just for convenience. I want to do everything on my own local server, working locally. So yeah, it's just for demo purposes that I'm using that.
Okay, perfect. So it is actually hitting the development server.
Yes.
In the normal scenario, it would be doing that. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay. One other question coming in here. So what is required to make this work? Are there DLLs or extension libraries that need to be installed?
No, nothing must be installed on the server itself. It's just one NSF or NTF database, and yeah, just put it onto the server, sign it, and you're ready to go.
Okay. Perfect. Is there a check of required fields on each step? And yeah, so in other words, can you make sure that you've got all the information before we get through to the next steps?
Yeah, absolutely. So you have you can check required fields here, and then just browse to the list of fields on the document, and it will and specify which ones are mandatory. So in this particular example, I would be setting all fields to be mandatory, I think.
Okay, perfect.
And then the way it works is that if you try to move on to the next node, you'll get a failure report saying that required fields are not present.
Okay, excellent. Can you create loops? So, for example, so you can return to an earlier point in the workflow?
Yeah, you can configure that. So you can configure it in a way where the user can choose to return to a specific node backwards, or even you can create a loop directly in the workflow so that it will return not by user decision to a specific node, so that it will happen all the time. So yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Okay. Excellent. Here's a curiosity question. Is the workflow modeler using Flash?
Possibly.
Yeah, currently yes, but we are currently creating a new workflow editor based on HTML5, and Flash is only needed currently for the workflow editor itself. So it's not needed to route a document through a process.
Right. Okay. Good. I think that was kind of a curiosity question to how you're actually accomplishing that. So perfect. Great. So yeah, just a reminder, if you have a question, now is the time to do it, and then we can do that. We do not ask specific pricing questions, but we can ask general questions like how is this licensed? Is it licensed per developer, per server, per?
Well, since you asked the question, it's
Yep.
licensed per end user. So the developer piece is not actually charged for. It just depends entirely on on the number of end users who are accessing workflows.
Okay, perfect. Next question. Can you customize flows using code, JavaScript, formula, Java, and then can you see the generated code? So maybe two-part question there. So can you customize flows using different code like JavaScript or formula or Java?
Yeah, you can do it. So we have events where you can configure your own server-side JavaScript code, which will be executed, and you can manipulate everything you want.
Okay. And I believe there's a second part here. Can you see the generated code? I think I'm assuming he's asking, can you now see the workflow code once it's done visually?
No, not the code directly. So what you can do is you can export what we're currently seeing, so as XML so there's no code generation at all at other points. So nothing to see.
Okay, that was a good question. I like it when you have to struggle to go, maybe not quite. So again, we're reading text questions, so it's I hope I'm interpreting their questions properly.
Yes, and poor Marco, his English is excellent, but his first language is German, so the questions are a little bit harder for him.
Yep, that's all right. This is good. And this is a great venue for you to ask questions because it's a time where you might be able to ask a question and actually see the answer as well, besides just hearing it. So we do recommend questions like that. So that's good. All right. I don't see any additional questions coming in. All right, Simon and Marco, I'll let you have the last word here on the webinar. And just a reminder to everyone that be watching for additional webinars coming from We4IT, and great company, great products, and great understanding of the Domino product. So we're really happy that they're able to do webinars and join us in our webinar series. Okay, Simon, last.
I haven't really got any last words. My email address is on the screen, so if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to contact me. My Twitter handle's there as well. If you want a sort of more personalized demo, or you want to see if we can, if you have a specific project in mind and you're not sure if we'll be able to handle it, don't hesitate to get in touch. We're very touchy-feely people, and we've always got time for our customers. So thank you for spending the time.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Marco, for preparing this. Everyone, thank you for attending, and have a great day, and thank you for joining.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.